What's up, everybody? Today we are breaking down this upcoming UFC fight card, Henry Cejudo versus Aljamain Sterling. I am also giving you my top 5 picks that's going to help you win your Reignmakers contest. Let's go! Okay, guys, like always, I have the numbers pulled up in front of me, the spreadsheet. This is crucial if you're playing any sort of daily fantasy sports, which Reignmakers fits into that category. It is DraftKings. Duh. I'm gonna break down the card here. The context of it. This is important because it's gonna give you an idea of what your lineup should be looking at. Should I be shooting for the stars and looking for those first round or bust knockout fighters, or should I go for the floor and get those women fighters that love to go all 3 rounds? And go for the main events that go 5 rounds and give you safer floor. Let's get into it. We have 13 fights in this fight card. That's the number one variable I like to look at. That is important because the more fights there are, the more opportunities for these for fighters to get over 100 points, thus raising the optimal lineup overall points, total points. And this fight card we have 13, which is average. 13 is average. Anything above 13 is a high fight card. Anything below 13 is a low fight card. So not too much to digest there. The second thing I like to look at is how volatile this fight card is. This fight card seems to be pretty volatile. Even just by looking at the names of here, you have Drew Dober, you have Matt Favola, you have Kron Gracie making his return after a long layoff. You have a bunch of newcomers. You have some wrestling upside. And even if you look at the numbers here, the inside the distance are pretty decent for overall fights. In particular, the inside the distance fighter numbers are pretty big. We have a lot of 40s, high 40s, 50s, even into the mid to high 60s here. Even the underdogs are pretty good at 37 and 39. You have here high 20s. So a lot of the inside the distance fighter percentages are really good here as well, giving us a high volatile fight card. The last variable I like to look at here is how many moderate to heavy favorites there are. Stuttered there, but we got through it. And the moderate to heavy favorites is a 2-1 favorite or greater. And here we have 3: Drew Dober, Evolov, and Chaos Williams. So that's basically giving us 10 live underdogs. And this is important because when we have 10 live underdogs, there's more likely for underdogs to come through. Therefore, we can invest more of our capital in these lower cost underdogs, generally lower cost underdog. Okay, so what this is trying to tell us is there's a high probability that this is the optimal lineup in our Rainmaker contest. Is going to be a high scoring lineup because there are a lot of inside the distance percentage. Their percentages are good. There's a couple of wrestlers here, and let's not forget there's 2 5-round fights here. That Bilal Muhammad versus Gilbert Burns is also a 5-round fight. Okay, so the battle plan is pick high volatility fights. Let's look at the inside the distance here. Who's likely to finish each other? Number 1. Number 2, don't feel the need to expose yourself to the main event. There's been fights in the past where it was crucial to expose yourself to the main event. This is not the case here because there's so many different fights that have that volatility that we're looking for. Again, number 1 thing we're looking for here is those high volatility, high ceiling fights. Do expose yourself to one of the 5-round fights because it is less likely that the winning lineup is not going to have 2 5-round fights. I think we can dodge 1 5-round fight, but not both of them. The likelihood of that is, I believe, is lower. So expose yourself to 1 5-round fight, but don't feel like the need that I have to have these 5-round fights. But I feel like it's a good idea to have at least 1 here. Lastly, there are a lot of live underdogs, but be very careful when you're picking these live underdogs because a low scoring win isn't gonna cut it here. We need these high ceiling fights. So a decision win from an underdog, which would mean more in the past where we're looking for safe floors, isn't the case here. We want that. We're shooting for the stars. We're going high or we're going low. We're not going to settle in the middle here. All right, now that we got all that out of the way, let's get to the damn picks. So my pick number one, I'm going with Chaos Williams. He has the highest inside the distance fighter. He's at 66.67% to finish his opponent. That fulfills the number one criteria, the probability of finishing their opponent. And also his opponent, it's his UFC debut. So that goes for a lot of, it adds to the volatility in this fight because we haven't seen him fight in the UFC. So a lot of times, well, I wouldn't say a lot of times, but there are many times where these debut fighters make their debut and get exposed here. So uh, we want these high volatile fights, and this fits the slate here. So pick number one, Chaos Williams. Pick number two, right now we're just going down the list here. It's just the order it seems like it's going. Is Evilov. He does have that wrestling upside. The lines for his inside the distance isn't through yet as of today on Thursday. He does have a 90% win odds, which is really high. And his opponent is also making his debut. So that's what we're looking for. That's what we love here is either the fighter you're picking is making a debut or the opponent's making a debut or both people are making a debut because we don't know as much as what's going to happen as if that fighter was already a UFC fighter. Our third fighter is Drew Dober. As you can see, is I'm picking those fighters that are moderate to heavy favorites because they do just happen to have the highest inside the distance line here. And I feel like we are going to have to pay up to get these fighters here. Drew Dober, as we all know, has that granite chin. He has a 60% inside the distance fighter to finish his opponent, who is Matt Frivola, who has been finished not once, but twice in the first round. So we're looking for that Drew Dober first round knockout. And if it doesn't happen, it's a bust. But hey, that's the game you're playing when you're picking these high volatile fights. So our last two picks, we're gonna go for the underdog. Let's not forget the underdogs because we do have 10 that are live here, but we have to be very careful with the ones we pick. So the first one we're picking is Braxton Smith. His ITD line for that total fight is the highest at -500. So we are gonna have to have some exposure to that fight here. He has the highest ITD line for his particular fighter at 39.22% for these underdogs. He is making his UFC debut. So like I said before, we're looking for those debut actions because, hey, what the hell is going to happen? Who knows what's going to happen with these guys? On top of that, none of his fights has gone past the first round. He does have one first round loss, but all his other wins are first round wins outside of the UFC, but they are first round wins. So this dude, Braxton Smith, is a first rounder bust. It's hard to do that. I know it's an emotional thing here. It's a bit gambling, but with these fight cards, we have to gamble here. It's not for the faint of heart. All right, and my last pick here. Well, before I give my last pick, I do want to mention that we have a lot of other fighters that have that 40 plus inside the distance fighter percentage. So I'm just giving you my top five. Feel free to get these. When you're building your lineups, be sure to put more emphasis in these ITD fighter lines as opposed to their just win. You don't want just a win here. You want them to finish their fighter inside the distance here. So last but not least, a fighter I'm very excited from because as you know, represent 10 Planet, I love Jiu-Jitsu, is probably my favorite art in MMA here, is Kron Gracie. Not too long ago was he pretty hyped coming into UFC. He has had a long layoff. I believe his last fight was in 2019. It's been 2, 3, 4 years, I believe, that he's been gone. So it's almost like he's making his debut in the UFC. It gives us that debut vibe with Kron Gracie coming back. His opponent does have a 48% takedown defense, so we really like that. He has a high ITD line for an underdog at 37%. And as we all know, if it gets to the ground, if Kron Gracie could get it to the ground, as chances are are pretty good that he can, considering his opponent has a 48% takedown defense. game over. Kron Gracie taking you to the ground, game over. And those are the reasons why I like Kron Gracie as my fifth and final pick. I'm done.